interested in speaking, we'll have them raise a hand.
Sure, I can do that.
Okay. Is there any public comment?
No hands at this time.
Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda, 2.0, is the consent calendar. So you have approval from the May regular meeting minutes. The monthly summary financial reports are on the consent agenda. So if anyone would like anything extracted, let me know. If not, we'll take a motion to approve.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented. Lynn
Is there a
Piazza.
second?
Dan Catlin will second the consent agenda.
Okay. I saw Jeff raising his hand. Thank you, Jeff. Two. All right. Anyone opposed to approving the consent agenda as presented? Hearing none, that's approved. Reports. Joy, do you want to give a PTO update?
Sure. We have not done too much in the last couple of weeks since we last met. But today we were happy to join in 6th grade graduation and hand out Amity bags and t-shirts to the graduating 6th graders. And also, we have yearbooks that are coming in a couple of weeks and will be delivered or mailed to the homes in probably 2 to 3 weeks. The PTO will be meeting as an executive board in the next couple of weeks to start to think about next year and how we will go about any of our, list of events and, what we can do as far as pre-planning during this whole COVID-19 time and what can we do virtually, what can we schedule. And that's pretty much it.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for helping out today and making this day as great as we could in the setting of everything we're dealing with. So thank you. Bob.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say on behalf of the administration and the staff and the Board of Ed, I want to thank Joy. I want to please extend the thanks to your fellow executive board members. You folks are always there to help us to celebrate the kids, to fundraise for the kids, to do all kinds of things. You usually say, just let us know how we can help. And that's exactly what you always do. And so please pass that on to your fellow executive board members. You folks being there today was so natural because you're always there. So thank you again for your support all year long and for today. Today was the last day of school, as we all know. It's always a joyous day in many ways. It's also a little bit of a sad day when we see our 6th graders leave. And of course, this is an unusual year on the last day of school because it just seems kind of strange what's happened in the last 3 months, but we've all gotten through it. And thank you to all of you out there who have made this a successful year in such an unusual, unprecedented time. I have a few announcements that I want to bring to you today, and just a few things that I'll just try to highlight. We've had 2 Board of Ed ad hoc classroom safety committee meetings since we last met as a board. We had one meeting on May 28th with a presentation by well-known climate restorative practice consultant Joanne Freiberg. And Joanne presented a very engaging presentation to us for over a couple of hours. We also then had an opportunity to meet on Tuesday, June 9th, and had an opportunity to review and reflect on the presentation, and also to just reflect on a lot of national events that are going on and the impact that that has had in a very difficult and painful way. We also had an opportunity to discuss the intersection of responsive classroom and the restorative practices that she spoke about. And the committee is looking forward to having a possible opportunity to hear from a second presenter in the coming weeks. So it was 2 very good meetings and great to have a great representation of the committee there for both of them. I want to say that I know I speak for so many people that we have experienced a very, very difficult and painful time over the past several weeks, not just in Woodbridge and not just in Connecticut, but across the nation and across the globe. I want to say our hearts are heavy after the egregious death of George Floyd and the way his life was taken. There have been other similar events as recently as even this weekend. And I know our school family, members of our school family, are feeling anger and pain. The administrative team and I have met with our Community and Diversity Committee actually several times. We've invited parents to contact us if they want to be able to reach out and express their feelings, concerns, and needs. I've had an opportunity to speak to a few parents along the way who've reached out, and others have expressed some appreciation for the resources and emailed messages that have been sent out. It seems very appropriate tonight that we will have an opportunity to highlight the work and hear from the members of our Community Diversity Committee this evening. This is a group that's made up of parents, teachers, and administrators who've accelerated their conversations and momentum in the past few weeks. So I'm looking forward tonight to be part of that presentation and for the board to be able to have some time of interaction with the committee members. Going on to fall school reopening. I have participated in several superintendent meetings with Connecticut State Department of Education officials related to the reopening of school in the fall. Considerations that are being discussed, of course, are safety first, but also how this reopening can be linked to the economy. There's been many discussions, discussed items regarding staffing levels, transportation, but the bottom line is all superintendents are eagerly awaiting the guidance to come from the commissioner's and governor's office about reopening of schools in the fall. And we are looking to have our first full meeting of this committee, of the committee I've set up next week. Our committee will most likely have a steering committee component, steering membership, as well as several subgroups, things such as a teaching and learning subgroup, health and wellness, and a facility managerial subgroup. So we are positioned to get the guidance and to move forward and to be ready for the fall. Our Board of Ed ad hoc SRO Security Personnel Committee is nearly in place, and we're going to be trying to have a meeting in the next week or so to begin that process where we can bring a recommendation to the full board in September. As you know, our sixth grade graduation took place today, and I think we've already heard a little bit about that, but I know Mrs. Sherman will probably speak a little bit about that as well. So we can hear about that in a moment. I want you to know that our virtual summer school programs are up on our website and ready for signups. Our directors have worked very hard at transforming these programs to be virtual as opposed to on-site. I also want you to know that the food service program that the BOA superintendents initiated at the beginning of the pandemic will be concluding on June 30th. We have provided information to parents today on how to access this service in other area locations starting on July 1st. I want to remind you that the Bridge, the annual publication of the celebration of what goes on at Beach Road School, is in the process of being developed and worked on, and it will be delivered to all Woodbridge households in July. Be on the lookout for that. And my final announcement is one that hopefully you've been anticipating and wondering about. I have a very special announcement about our selection of the 2021 Beecher Road School Woodbridge School District Teacher of the Year. We had our end of the year breakfast last week, and as tradition has it, we always announce who the Teacher of the Year is. And this year, the selection committee made the unique and well-deserved decision this year to select, can I have a drum roll, please? The selection was the entire Beecher Road School teaching staff. There was a nomination that was stated that it feels impossible to single out any one teacher this year. The pandemic has shown that the greatest act of solidarity in our lifetime, which is evident in our school as much as around the globe. So in testament to that, this is the year to celebrate and recognize every teacher at Beecher Road School. So congratulations, Beecher Road School teachers. on your collective nomination as the Beach Road School Teacher of the Year 2021. That concludes my part of the announcements. And unless there's any other questions about that, I would turn this over to Mrs. Sherman for a few of her announcements in relation to what's been going on.
Bob, I just want to say on behalf of the board, we couldn't agree with that selection anymore. I mean, it truly has been an amazing thing to watch the school come together and the amount of work and effort the teachers have put in to make our students feel like there's a connection to the school. And it's really been, I know there's been a lot of stress, and it's been a very difficult thing for everyone, juggling all the demands of having your kids at home and being a teacher. And we really, from the bottom of our heart, can't thank you enough for all of the great work that you guys have been doing on behalf of the kids at Beach Road School. So well deserved. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to be very, very brief. I only have a few quick things to share with you. And the first thing that I actually want to start with is similar to what Bob and Steve just said. I would like to just say a ginormous thank you to the parents who have worked tirelessly to support their children and the teachers, to the teachers, to the teaching assistants, to all the staff at Beach Road School who have just done a tremendous job during a very, very challenging time. And I think, the hardest thing for teachers is to not be with children. That is why so many of us get into the profession, because we love kids and we love the connection and we just love being with them. And I think that teaching in a vacuum, the way that we have had to do in the last several months, has been a tremendous challenge. And our teachers, as you know, have done an amazing job, and our teaching assistants have done an amazing job of overcoming that and finding new and unique ways to connect with kids. So a big thank you to really our entire Beecher community. The next thing that I want to just say is that we did have some end of year wrap up celebration. Usually the end of year, there's pizza boxes piled in the hallways, and there's parties happening, and there's gifts coming in, and it's just a really wonderful time to sort of celebrate together the year and to come together as a community, and also just to spend some time reflecting on the year and thinking about the year that happened and the year that's coming. And our teachers and our students managed to do that virtually to the best of their abilities. We did have, as Bob mentioned, an end of year staff breakfast, which was nice to sort of all be together. We also, as you know, had a 6th grade virtual graduation. A big thank you to Mr. James Crawford, who put that together. He worked, I don't even know how many hours to make that event happen. And to all of our guests who gave up time to speak for that, and to our 6th grade teachers who recorded their students' names. And it really was very much a team effort. And I think that overwhelmingly what I heard was positive feedback from the parents. And then today the students got to come in to pick up their diplomas and their programs and to get a picture. We had a few special spots set up around the building where they could take pictures with their family. Mrs. Widmeyer very generously donated her time and her talents and took pictures of anybody who wanted it. And our secretaries worked tirelessly to make sure all the diplomas and the programs and everything was printed and ready to go. So it was a really nice way, I think, sort of end the year for our 6th grade students. And our PTO, of course, was there. They were there the whole entire day with us, passing out special presents to the students. So it was a really nice way, I think, to send off our graduating class, and we are most certainly going to miss them. One quick last thing that I want to mention is that the summer reading and the summer math, I'm going to put my plug in there for summer reading and summer math packets. They are posted on our district website. So for those of you with children who are listening in or who are watching, please make sure that you go to our district website and get your children engaged in reading and math all summer long, because we definitely want to keep those skills up throughout the summer so that when we welcome them back in the fall, they're ready to go. So thank you, everybody. And if there's no questions for me, then that concludes my report.
Thank you, Lisa. I also want to thank you and Cheryl and Doreen for really stepping up and doing an incredible job during all of the last few months. So you guys have been wonderful, and we can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
So I will
Bob,
go
what do you-
ahead.
Go
Yep,
ahead.
so I'll go ahead. So this will lead us into our next item, which is the survey results. And I'm going to just briefly summarize these for you. And I just want to mention that James Crawford's name was just mentioned a little while ago for the graduation video. James has been very instrumental in being able to get this data turned around in a very short amount of time. We've had an opportunity to reflect on all of this, on an initial basis a couple times, but we'll delve into it a little more deeper. Certainly the information that these surveys provide to us confirm that we've had, obviously, everybody knows this, a unique set of challenges this year for both parents, students, as well as, of course, our teachers and our teacher assistants. And so we're looking at this information to help us in different places, whether it may be in our reopening plans for next year as we plan different scenarios potentially, or also in our curriculum work during the summer, or in other ways as they may come up. So this is obviously information that is helpful in many ways. I'm going to, again, just hit the highlights of this. I'm going to go to the teacher survey first. We had a very, very strong, we've actually had very strong responses in all the surveys in terms of the number of participants, actually a lot stronger than I might have anticipated. In the teacher survey, obviously, I think if I made just a couple of comments here, and that is that there is obviously a lot of support felt within the building. And also there is the feeling from the teachers, again, teacher survey, that holding up, how are you holding up during distance learning? Well, obviously it's challenging, and with the response of 49% in the favorable range of either a 4 or 5 answer. Oops, there we go. I also want to mention that some of the overall reflections we have, if we really take and synthesize all of the responses, for teachers, distance learning was a very time-consuming and challenging process. There is a desire on the part of teachers to focus on the importance of the social and emotional well-being of children. There has been overall reflective feedback with positive comments on administrative support, and certainly there is a feeling that perhaps clearer expectations would be helpful in what we do with distance learning in the future, possibly. Potential next steps for us here is to just have a sharing up time with WEA Executive Board, use our summer curriculum work and our reopening committee. Also, we have scheduled for this week a focus group for teachers who are interested in going a little deeper in their explanation of how distance learning works. So we'll be having a focus group for teachers who wish to participate. I'm just going to move quickly to each of the other ones, and then I'll open it up to any kind of board comments and questions or whatever. The teacher assistant survey, again, I think mirrors in some ways the teacher one, with a feeling of support that they have, and perhaps holding up a little bit better with distance learning based upon there's different responsibilities, obviously. With our teacher assistants, I think there was very honest feedback provided. And we are also planning on holding a focus group with our teacher assistants this week as well to get a little deeper feel for how their involvement took place and how they can see themselves in this the next time around if we are involved in distance learning. The parent survey, again, we had 443 responses, which is terrific. We have about 500 and change families, 500 or so families, 560, I think, somewhere in that neighborhood. But we have responses here, obviously, that I think are clear that while there may have been a very good feel of communication between the teacher and the family, the overall feel and the favorable range for how parents felt about the effectiveness of distance learning was fairly low, 32%. I think clearly, I think parents, if you summarize a lot of what we heard from parents, they have a desire for more live interactions for their students, small group, and more social opportunities. There certainly has been a desire for perhaps more feedback on student work. These are things that are all important, but things are not easily done in distance learning, but let me say that as well. Certainly increasing the time and the contact time of special area instruction and teachers with students, finding a way to do that. considering sometimes more printed material than screen time, because we know screen time was obviously way up from what a student would normally experience. And then there were some other items such as, how the use of platforms or device availability impacted what was going on. Our next steps here, we actually put in the newsletter a few weeks ago to ask if there was any parents interested in being part of a focus group, and we've actually scheduled a focus group, but it's going to be scheduled actually for this Thursday for those particular people who expressed an interest. So we can go a little deeper with parents and get a little more specifics on the feel of all of that. Lastly, for students, I just want to say that we had a very strong response from our students. And I think our students, I think they did a terrific job. Overall, students seem to be pretty positive, and for the most part, about whether it was their ability to use the tools or needing help or being supported. They felt very supported by their teachers. That was the highest rating that they had in the 4 questions there. And I think students also seem to have a good familiarity with distance learning tools. And obviously that shows that they've been using those tools prior to distance learning and felt comfortable enough that it wasn't distracting from their overall instruction. There certainly were comments, many of them about distractions and how distractions impacted their learning, whether it be the siblings, surroundings, and certainly missing social interaction time with their fellow students, and challenge in managing their time during all of this as well. So we'll take a look at all of that and see how we can make that more beneficial for students as we move forward in the future, with this being a potential way of delivering instruction next year as one mode. I'm going to stop there. That was a very, very brief and very general overview. I'll open this back up to you, Steve, or however you want to move forward here.
Anybody have questions? We'll start with there.
I just want to echo what others have said and just really thank all of the teachers, the staff, the supportive administrators, including Bob, for pulling this off, because in the middle of March, we woke up all of a sudden to a very different world, and the challenges were tremendous. I mean, we had to figure this all out where none of us had the prior experience. So when I was taking a look at the parent feedback, at first I thought, oh, 1/3 said that it was effective, the distance learning. I thought, oh, that doesn't sound so good. But when you think about it, it's actually 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, right? So 1/3 thought it was effective, 1/3 thought it was neutral, and 1/3 thought it was not that effective. So I actually thought that was pretty good, given all the challenges that we faced. I mean, we have families that have very, very different needs across the spectrum. And it's just an incredible challenge to meet all those different needs. So I think you guys did a great job. Could we do better? I mean, of course, because you could always say we could do better. But I think it's also important to say, look, we've come very far in a very short amount of time. And now that we have some experience under our belt, we'll try to make it better. But I look at the results and I think, thank you, all of you, and great job.
I'll make one other comment, and I echo everything Joyce said. I think the other thing that I found really interesting was reading the comments from the students. It really warmed my heart to see how much they miss school and how much they love school. And I think that says a lot about Beecher Road School. And so their enthusiasm to get back into the building and be with their friends and be with their team. I mean, it was a very nice thing to see.
So one of the things that I took away from the survey the most was how positive the teachers responded to the administration and the support from the administration. So that was an amazing thing to see. I mean, it was like nearly perfect. So I have to say that, like, kudos to the administration for supporting the staff and engaging the staff so much. The other thing that was peculiar to me that I was surprised by is that on our hours allocation for the teacher survey, there was absolutely zero people who said they spent less than their regular hours, which I thought that to be weird. And I was wondering if maybe we asked the wrong question, or maybe if there was a better question that we could have asked, because I think that maybe what people were trying to express in answering that question, like their heart's desire in that question, was that possibly this was difficult and like very difficult for them. And they were using that question as a way to convey the magnitude of difficulty they felt versus the number of hours they actually spent working. And I'm sure some people were spending tremendous amounts of hours, but I just was, in speaking to some of my friends and other teachers in the world, if I have zero people that spent less than their regular hours was just surprising. And then the final thing that I walked away with, the student survey, I was, in reading the comments again, a lot of them brought joy to my heart, but a lot of them also made me very sad as well, because there was lots of challenges that I never thought that the kids, like I never conceived of the challenges that the children may have had. For example, one that really jumped out to me that just was like, oh, well, I should have thought of that, was that if everyone has a morning meeting at 9:30, then you have a device challenge if you don't have enough devices in the home. Like if you have 6 kids in a home and all kids are having morning meetings at 9:30, how can all kids use the device at the same time? And that's kind of like a no-brainer after you think about it, but it's like, well, yeah. So I'm sure that there's a lot of comments like that from the kids that we can, by looking at their comments, even though they're little people, they have a lot of insight, it seems, into what their challenges actually were. So those were my takeaways from the survey. There's a tremendous amount of information inside that survey for the administration to use as they move forward in the fall. So I think it was definitely worth doing. So thank you for doing it. I appreciate that.
Hey, Dan, as an obstetrician, I wish everyone had 6 kids in their home, but that would be much better for us.
So I'll just take a moment and speak to the issue of time that teachers put in. So I did a read loud a couple of times for the first grade and talked about some reading strategies and what to look for when you read. And I have to tell you that to read a short children's book and to do the video, Dan, took me over an hour. And that was just for one little short lesson that the teachers did. Now, I've seen some of the things that the teachers prepared for the kids, and I have to tell you that I was really very much amazed. And the teachers that I've spoken to, I can guarantee that the majority of them were putting in well beyond their contracted hours. So, and having experienced it, the very little bit that I did, I can only imagine what time they spent preparing and interacting with their students as well.
We did see some feedback there where teachers were saying, we could use some training, some PD, some technical PD, right? Because these were platforms and you could tell that the teachers were really struggling, but they were trying so hard to make it work. I mean, I never actually got it working for my younger daughter, but I could kind of piece together here and there. It was good enough because I felt badly for all the effort and time that the teacher was trying to spend trying to troubleshoot. So maybe, if we are still in distance learning in the fall, we can get some training to these guys.
And in response to what you said, Lynn, I do not doubt at all that it is incredibly time consuming to do a lot of this stuff. And I was actually amazed that when I started doing Board of Ed, I actually started tracking all my hours for my work and for my personal life and for Board of Ed. And what I came to realize was that I felt totally like I was working all the time. But what I found out was that I wasn't actually doing, hopefully my boss isn't listening, my job all the time, right? And it actually took me several hours at night to get my full 8 or 9 hours in for my day job, because I would be pulled to have a lovely conversation with Miss Shavers for 20 minutes or, with Bob for, 20 minutes. So my day was so broken up and I was so pulled in so many directions. It felt like I was working more than my normal hours, but objectively, I was not. And I spoke to 5 different districts with teachers above our DIRG, below our DIRG, and they all said that, and they have no reason to lie to me. Some of them are one gentleman spent an hour speaking to me on the phone, close personal friend of mine. He's a SPED teacher, and he actually manages several SPED teachers. And he said he has no knowledge of any colleague of his that is working more than their normal hours. Quote, that's a quote from him. So, I mean, I just want to say, like I said, I don't doubt it. Just to have a 0 in the survey, and like when you look at the aid survey, you see a normal distribution there. You just expect to see a normal distribution. So when I don't see a normal distribution, I always question what's going on. And like I said, I think it's probably we asked the wrong question. It's like we got the data for a question that we necessarily didn't ask.
Anybody else have any other questions about the survey for Bob?
One other point I wanted to bring up, there was definitely a lot of requests for live interactive meetings from both students and parents. And I could see why that would be the case because you have more connection with your peers and your teacher. But I'm a little bit concerned just also reading the feedback from teachers who had children that they needed to also take care of, or in some cases, their elderly parents. And, one of my kids had a teacher that with 2 young children, she's trying to do these meetings, and it's not easy, as you all know, to get childcare. So I just felt for these teachers who are trying to juggle all these different competing demands. So I hear what you're saying about the live interactive meetings, but if we could also just be mindful of the situations that the teachers might have at home.
Steve, I was very struck when I looked at the feedback, especially from the teachers at the evaluations of the Board of Education. And they were relatively negative. And looking through the data, it seems that a large part of that has to do with feeling of not being supported, and that some of that may have come from conversations that we've had about assessment as one piece of this. And so I wanted to acknowledge that that's there. And I read that and I saw it, and some of us have talked about that. I want to apologize if I or we have come across as being not supportive. As Lynn has just said, we have tremendous respect and gratitude. You guys were given an extraordinarily difficult situation, and the administration and the teachers and the staff have done an extraordinary job in dealing with it. Very empathetic. My job is teaching. I run curriculum. I had to convert everything into an online space. I get it. It is really hard, and we are incredibly grateful. So I hope in the context of talking about assessment that our goal, my goal, was never to place higher demands on anybody, to make things more difficult. It was never a suggestion of a summative assessment of the performance of our students or the performance of the teachers whatsoever. It was simply, the hope was to be able to acknowledge that this is like a hurricane that has struck us, and it's really difficult, and to have some sense of the impact as early as possible so that we can plan accordingly. That's the only thing that I personally have ever wanted out of this, and just to be able to do it in whatever the easiest way is, but to have some sense so that when we get ready for the fall, we can do that. And if those comments in previous meetings have come across as unsupportive or negative, I really want to apologize, because that was not at all the intention. And I thank everybody for your work.
Thanks.
I have a question about the parent survey. I'm wondering what those data look like disaggregated by grade level. It's my sense that that it was more challenging for parents of younger children, given the level of support that those children require doing distance learning, being on the computer, needing the parent to be present. Is that is that your read, Bob, or whoever else is being able to look at the data in a more in-depth way? That the data break out more negatively for the parents of younger children than older children?
Mike, thanks for that question. And what I would say is that we've been swimming upstream as fast as we can in the last week or so, and this has only been available to us. I will tell you that we haven't had a chance to go into the disaggregation of this yet, but I do believe that that's an important area that that will help us to kind of get an idea of, primary versus intermediate grades. So I don't have any wisdom to share with you right now because we just haven't had the chance to go there yet.
Okay.
But and once we do get there, I'll try to circle back to the board if there's a overriding trend, the data and what that looks like.
Mhm.
It
Thank you.
does seem as though when you read the written comments, if you extrapolate a little bit, that the parents that struggle a bit more are the ones that have younger children who are dependent learners. I mean, I, for one, I filled out 2 separate surveys because the experience was very different for my 1st grader than for my 5th grader. But you could kind of tell from the feedback what was going on as well.
Even from the children's comments, you could tell kind of how they fell on the grades too. Because I remember one vividly that was like, "I'm distracted by my toys," and it's like, okay, well, that's obviously a very young child who's getting pulled away. Where the majority of you could tell the older kids were all social, like they just desired their friends so much, and that's where their real pain was. So definitely there was 2 complete holes to even the kids' comment.
All right. Any other questions for Bob about the survey? Bob, do you want to just talk? I mean, like, what's the plan with the survey at this point?
So as I mentioned, and by the way, before I forget to say this, you might recall that one of the questions on the survey was, would you like to have a personal contact made with you or to follow up for support? Again, since we've just this is closed out so close to the end of the school year, we haven't been able to circle back to the people who have asked us to get back to them. It's on our plans. It's on our to-do list and very soon. But in case you're out there listening, and you're somebody who had asked for someone to reach out, you're in our minds. We just haven't been able to put the pedal to the metal yet. I think really the way we're looking at this is to go again, to go deeper into this, where there is disaggregation that can be done and makes sense to look at that. We are looking to have an opportunity to hear from a focus group of parents, a focus group of teachers, and a focus group of teacher assistants to bring this a little bit more to life and a little deeper. And I see implications for some of this in our reopening committee when we have conversations about distance learning and setting up a structure for that as a mode for the future, as well as for our curriculum work in the fall. Those are the overriding big and taking some of the themes and working it into, whether it be how do we increase the engagement of students or whatever that might be. How do we look at that?
Great, thank you. Got the next agenda item too, Bob.
Okay, so the next agenda item is an opportunity for you to hear from our Community and Diversity Committee, and I'm very excited about this opportunity that our colleagues, our parent and administrator colleagues and teacher colleagues, I just wanted to just say briefly here, this is a committee, and you'll hear this again when it's spoken about, but this is a committee that's a school-based committee. It's not a board committee, but it's a school-based committee that I started as an important component of the strategic plan when I first came to Woodbridge, and I heard all the voices in my entry plan and in the creation of the strategic plan, the importance of and the value of knowing ourselves as a diverse community, a community that wants to celebrate and embrace our differences, and to look at that in the context of our whole school community. So this has been a very exciting committee over the past few years. The people on the committee, teachers, parents, administrators have really come together and really, I say the chemistry of the committee is really, it's exciting to be part of a committee meeting with this group. So tonight they're here, and I'm starting it off. Lisa will add in a little bit, and then we'll hear from a few of the parents on the committee. You can see all the names of the current committee members listed on the last page of the PowerPoint. But you can see that this committee falls within Goal 4 of our strategic plan, which is the district will build partnerships, promote and celebrate the diversity, multidimensional aspects of school, local, regional, and global community. I do want to say, and I'll just add in here that a lot of our beginning meetings were talking about themes and even data. And so for the next couple of slides, I'll just say that are very interesting and telling slides about demographics. And our student demographics, just to be very global here, about 30% of our student body is non-white. There are certain percentages that are not given because they become too small and they become personally identifiable. So the State Department does not bring specific numbers. You can see how our 69.8% of white students compares to 52.4 in the state. And as you take a look at each of groups, you can see what that looks like, Woodbridge versus the state. But I think the telling part here is really the next slide, where you can see, and this is a trend not just for Woodbridge, but for the state, where you see the educator, the certified teacher demographics, where only 3.7% of our teachers are non-white. You'll also notice, obviously, that statewide, it's not even 10%. This is an area that the state of Connecticut has been working very hard at in terms of attracting diverse workforce for schools, but it's been an upward hill to climb. But certainly we have a lot of work to do in this area in terms of our demographics. And we each year, and it'll be explained in a slide, but each year we take a look at how we can go to job career fairs where teachers are there, and actually minority recruitment fairs, and really try to move the needle on this. And we honestly haven't. And that's just a dilemma. It doesn't mean we give up, and it doesn't mean we can try other things. So, but let me stop there. I'm kind of wandering a little bit. Lisa, I don't know if you wanted to say anything before we turn it over to the rest of the committee in terms of, Lisa has been very instrumental in leading the committee in multiple different aspects of this over the last couple of years. Lisa?
Thank you, Bill. I actually think that you covered a lot. I would say that I would add that the conversations that the committee has are very powerful and very positive and really focused on supporting teachers and students. And I know I, for one, always come out of those conversations feeling better for having had them. And I know that part of our mission as a committee is to sort of expand on that and provide that opportunity to everybody more consistently. So I would just add that in for now. And I know that we have some committee members here that are also ready to share and talk about some of the work that we've been doing. I don't know, Bob, if you want me to share the presentation on my screen.
Actually, I think it would be great if you could share the presentation. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to say one more thing, and then we'll turn it over to Jay, Mohini, Althea, and I think Aaron, 4 of our members, I believe, or at least 3 out of 4 of you. I do want to say that, look, there's no secret, folks. There's been a lot of painful moments that have gone on in our country over the last, you can make a case for hundreds of years, obviously, no doubt about it, but at least in the last few weeks and months. And so the momentum and the need and the conversations are here now more than ever before. So this is an opportunity to share with the board what the committee is, who they are, but also how we move the needle in a desperate way. So go ahead and share that, Lisa, and we'll turn it over to other members of the committee to cover the other slides.
Okay, I've never done this before, so just give me a second. I've never done it this way, at least. Am I doing it here? Hopefully I got that right. Everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Okay.
You can just go through
Good
those
work.
first few slides that I had already done. There was the goal for the strategic plan. And then the next one is there's the demographics for students and the educator demographics.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Bob and Lisa. And thank you to the committee for letting us come on today and tell you a little bit about the work that we are doing and the work that we are interested in doing. So I'm Bikini Ramanathan. I'm one of the parent volunteers on this committee. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we have so far worked on. And then further along, you'll hear a little bit more about the work we have planned. So just to give you a little introduction, the Community and Diversity Committee, as Bob mentioned, was set up in 2017, and I've been a member since 2018. It's composed of parents like me, teachers, and administration. We meet fairly regularly. At times it has been bi-monthly, at times it has been monthly, and then more recently it has been weekly. We act as an advisory committee to advise the administration and the school leadership regarding and provide some direction, leadership, and resources to support various projects and activities. So the idea is to identify current activities, to expand stakeholder, and by that we mean parents, teachers, community, students participation, and then to promote and celebrate the diversity of each individual. You can move on to the next slide, Lisa.
Oh, hold on. I seem to be having some problems here. There we go.
Okay, so this is a really busy slide, but it actually represents some of the work that we've done over the past 3 years. And I just add that it probably represents a very small part of what we hope to achieve in the future. So the top panel represents some of the initiatives that we have taken as a committee, but also as a school. So in 2017 and 18, you'll notice that the administration attended some trainings on implicit bias. In addition, librarians and classroom teachers specifically attended workshops to try and build more inclusive libraries and to increase the number of books by diverse authors on diverse topics. And then we also collaborated with the Arts Week Where Are Your Roots community map. And the bottom panel talks a little bit about our messaging to the community. And I think this is really a critical part of what we do, and we certainly need to expand on that. But you'll notice that the superintendent's update includes some of the work that the community has done, and it's also included in the principal's message. So in the middle column, in 2018 and 19, again, the committee partnered with the town of Woodbridge for several community book reads. and recruited more parents, actively recruited actually parents to share their diverse experiences and expertise. And the librarians continued to work really hard. They attended workshops specifically addressing several aspects of diversity and attempted to diversify the library. And again, in the bottom panel, you'll notice that there were several communications from both from the superintendent as well as in the principal's message regarding some of these initiatives. 2019 and 20 have probably been so far the year that we have done more active work. And again, we hope that 2021 will be even busier. So in 2019 and 20, at the beginning of the school year, we initiated a diversity inventory exercise. So it was an audit of the library that the committee members conducted. So parents and administrative staff and faculty from the school, they conducted an audit of the library to try and just get a sense of the extent of inclusivity and diversity in the library. This actually went very well. We were able to share and discuss some of our impressions. And then this was followed by a presentation of this audit to the teachers and teachers self-auditing that prompted further discussion amongst the teachers about their findings within their classrooms. So across all 3 years, as Bob mentioned, the administration has attended minority recruitment events to try and recruit more diverse faculty. We have also been working towards creating a specific diversity and inclusion tab on the school website. This is important to kind of keep track of the work that we're doing, but also to serve as a form of communication. Unfortunately, COVID put a stop to many of these things, but you'll see that that's still something to work on. And then again, I think our classroom and school-wide library were certainly there was expansion and diversification of books there. Apart from the routine communications from the principal, this year also saw specific communications within this past month. And you may have seen it as part of the principal's message that came out. The first update on June 1st was with some resources for how parents may talk to kids on racism and violence. And this was followed by a second communication, which included a statement on the death of George Floyd, and also some more resources, some of our thoughts and discussions, and then information about the committee so that parents could reach out to us. And I'll be handing over to Erin to talk about the future initiatives. And if there were any questions on that slide, I think we can take questions at the end.
Thanks, Mohini. Hi, I'm Erin Williamson, and I am a parent of a rising third grader. So I also sit on the diversity committee, and we've kind of broken out our initiatives into a number of categories that we think about. One, of course, is parent and community engagement. I think it's really important that we recognize this work while we are hosted by Beecher Elementary. This work needs to extend beyond just the school and be embraced by parents, by the community as a whole. Also, we want to support faculty engagement and training. You know, we recognize that we need to provide our faculty and staff with resources and support so that they feel confident and comfortable engaging in conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also so that they can incorporate it into their curriculum, so that they can be actually proactively teaching our students about diversity, equity, and inclusion. As Bob mentioned, you know, it is important to have diverse faculty. It is a challenge, but it's also really important for those of you who are at the Black Lives Rally Matter this weekend. Some of the speakers spoke to the fact that they did not see themselves in their teachers and in the administration until they were well into their high school career. So it is important that we have diverse faculty, not just faculty that reflects our student body, but it's important that we just start to interact, that we expose our kids to different people, different cultures. That's something that we need to value in this community and really prioritize. Again, we are hoping that this work can get into the curriculum so that we're not just responding to things, but that we're actually proactively working to educate our children to be an open and accepting society and to be a community that values the diversity that does exist within our community. And there is actually a lot more diversity than you might initially think. Also, stewardship. One of the things that we have really, as Mohini mentioned, we want to create a community that really reflects and embraces diversity. And so we've looked at doing things like the audits, getting feedback from staff, getting feedback from parents, getting feedbacks on trainings that we're doing. How can we as committee members help steward this work? You know, we're not necessarily going to eat everything, but we would like to help support others who also want to do this work, whether it's our school age kids, whether it's our parents, whether it's our teachers, and you'll hear some of that work that's currently happening. And finally, we'd like to see some broad-based initiatives, both within our school, but also our community. And I think cross collaboration. So like Mohini was mentioning with the library and the school, really, how do we infuse this across the community, that this is a community that values diversity and highlights it and recognizes that we also have a long ways to go in addressing some of the systemic racism, the systemic homophobia that does exist. All right, next slide. So in terms of the short-term objectives that we're looking at, one of the things that's become really apparent that actually was really good feedback for us to receive as a committee was that there was a lot of parents that were surprised that actually we had a diversity committee and on Facebook and in some of the communications. And so that really made us realize that we need to be more proactive, both as a committee, but also in partnership with Lisa and with Bob, to let parents, to let our community know that this committee does exist and that this is something that we value and need to and must put resources towards. So we're looking at increasing our communication. Mohini mentioned the website, also through emails and newsletters. I know that Bob and Lisa regularly send out emails. So we're looking to add more of our activities and what we're doing, and not just what we're doing, but what the teachers are doing, what the students are doing into those communications so that people can see what the community is doing to really address this the way it needs to be addressed and incorporate it. The other thing is Bob is going to have a superintendent forum around this issue, which is really wonderful. Again, showing leadership, showing that this is really important at the highest levels, and also soliciting the feedback from community members, what they'd like to see, how they'd like to be involved. One of the things we've talked about, there's a huge initiative. A lot of people are wanting to read books. They're recognizing there is a lot of information out there. A lot of books have been written. So we're looking actually at doing a book club for community members, including for parents. And truth be told, this idea came out of faculty engagement. Some of our members are on the faculty, as Bob and Mohini and Lisa alluded to or mentioned. And they actually have taken the initiative to start an educators book club, which is really wonderful. We're excited to see that happening. So they're going to be reading a book this summer about how do we have conversations about race. They're doing it just as faculty and staff, which I think is really wonderful. It'll create a safe environment where they can discuss challenges that they faced and how they have addressed it, sometimes well, and maybe also sometimes poorly. I think one of the things that we're really realizing is that we're going to make mistakes. Right? Nobody knows how to do this. Nobody has all the answers, or we would have figured this out. So we have to get comfortable with living in the uncomfortable and with making mistakes and acknowledging them. Also, Lisa's looking to have this as a monthly agenda item at the team meeting. So again, talking to them, how are you integrating issues related to diversity? And that's diversity not just on race, but gender, sexual orientation, religion, ability. You know, we take for some of us who are able-bodied, take for granted a lot that we're able-bodied. And so how do we talk with our youth about that? Also, teachers, every teacher, we're asking them to do a semester reporting of how they integrated DEI issues into their curriculum for the year. And it's not a gotcha type of thing. It's just to help the teachers understand that this is something that this is important and that is valued in the school, and to get them thinking about it as they're creating their curriculum. And again, the hope is that as they, maybe initially it's reactive, oh, I got to do something so I can fill out that form, but then it will start to become normalized. It will start to become how they think about things. It will help them shape how they think about their curriculums and their teaching. I must say a shout out to Althea, who is not presenting today, but is on the phone and available for questions. She has been an amazing, amazing member of this committee, and has actually been able to secure some professional development free to the school, which is amazing. So we had hoped to have that happen during this current school year. Unfortunately, COVID hit, and so it's been postponed. But it is going to happen next school year. She's going to come in. She's going to teach all of our faculty and administrators on culturally responsive practices in education. I also want to say that she is extending that offer to separately work with the Board of Education and provide the same type of training to you all. So, you know, I would encourage you to really think about taking her up on that offer and having her come and train the Boards of Education members on her work and on the importance of having you know, a culturally responsive practices in our educational system in our Peter Road School. We're also going to come and present to the faculty about our committee, about what we're doing, and to solicit feedback from them about how we can be helpful to them. And we're hoping to highlight faculty. We have a number of staff, and again, we have some amazing teachers that are just taking some wonderful initiatives. And I think sometimes other teachers aren't sure where even to begin. So one of the ways that we're hoping to share this knowledge is to really highlight and spotlight faculty that are going above and beyond and are working and starting to integrate this work. Because again, we want this to become part of every classroom and every curriculum. And finally, we're looking to build out our online resources. I think one of the things that we recognize is that a lot of people, you know, faculty, parents, caregivers, they want to have these conversations. They just don't know where to start or how to begin. And so again, we're hoping to continue to build out on that webpage some online resources so that people know that that can be a landing place where they can get more information. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jay for our long-term objectives.
Jay, I think you're muted.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Let me start. Thanks, Erin. My name is Jay Dyer. I'm a parent of a second grader going into third and a fifth grader going into sixth. I've been on this committee probably the longest, on and off, depending upon the teaching and work schedule that I have. But it's been great to be a part of this committee. So what I'm really going to focus on is to take what Erin has just given you, the short-term objectives, which are primarily communication, work with the faculty on improving delivery, improving embodiment of inclusivity. So our long-term objectives, and we're still really working on these, are around recruitment. Bob mentioned earlier that both Lisa and he have been working on trying to recruit diverse faculty, attract diverse faculty, increase inclusivity. And he and I have had this discussion for a few years, and I think what we're going to try and do here as a committee is to come out with some new initiatives. Maybe talk a little about how we might involve different approaches in enticing our interns maybe, or learning from our local schools in New Haven how they attract faculty, diverse faculty, and how they retain them, and what is it that we need to do. And so I think we're looking at trying to find new approaches, new ways of doing things that might enhance the search that Bob and Lisa have been doing. The next thing I'd like to talk a little about is sort of curriculum development and courses. So we've already done an audit in the library about diversity, and we've started to move into the classroom. Some of the teachers in the school, I'd like to say, many of the teachers in the school have taken this initiative themselves, and they continue to update the books that they have in the classroom. We'd like to sort of go one step further and take a look at the classroom and see what books that we have in the classroom, what resources do teachers need and could do with to try and enhance the classroom environment so that children are reading issues centered on diversity and inclusivity. Now, one of the arguments that's always presented to me is that, why do we need to know this? Why do students need to know about diversity and inclusivity? They do a lot of worksheets about the civil rights movement, etc. Now, one thing I will say is that I think it allows students to learn at their pace, learn from each other. The most important part of this for me is about learning to reason, learning to accept. And I think this is a higher level of learning that we're trying to instill in our students. Building on what we've done with the library, we'd like to do some surveys on inclusivity issues, primarily with the educators, to see what their perception is. This is just to gauge, to see, what we need to do and to advise on training issues. Last but not least, I think it's one of my pet projects. I'd like to see a course dedicated to diversity, and I think some of us have talked about this. And the way I'm seeing this is to take existing curriculum, say in the 5th or the 6th grade, and develop that toward a course that really embodies these discussions. And one of the things that I hear from many teachers is that they find it very difficult to discuss issues on diversity. I think the training, and I think our discussions and our presence in the school, bringing diverse faces, bringing in inclusivity issues, will really sort of raise the bar. And I'd like to see our school be at the forefront of the state. Moving on to the scorecard, here we're just really circling back. I like to call this the triangulation method, where we're putting some initiatives forward. We just want to see how they're going. We'd like to see how the demographics vis-a-vis the students versus the educators are panning out over time. We'd like to see how our change in the library and the books is panning out. One of the things that I find difficult is where we can put books on the shelf, but that doesn't mean that the issues are sort of moving on to the students. So here, I think the training blended with the resource will work really well. It seems to work in the university setting well. The next thing is student engagement. One thing we haven't really got to is really engage the students about this. These are our ambassadors. These are the ones that are going to be here after I'm gone. And they're going to be the ones that take this battle forward and take this whole issue and be the leaders of our community. So I think we've got to really bring them into the fold here, maybe discuss this with the student council, maybe have the student council set up a diversity committee. And here, this may involve some leadership from the committee in working with the students to see if we can get this moving. Last but not least, Mohini, Aaron have already discussed a number of the issues and initiatives that we've already set into play. I think we've been working really, really hard currently, but there's a number of other things that we can do. Bring in more diverse speakers, bring in musicians or artists. I think we can have community events, liaise with the library, with the town, to host more diversity and inclusivity-led events. Last but not least, I mean, this has been a pleasure to work with this group of people. It's been very easy. The administration has been excellent, very, very supportive. The teachers, I mean, they're our access to the classroom. Last but not least, the parents have given a lot of their own time, at least in the last few weeks, towards these issues. So just to wrap up, I think in the last slide, we have all the committee members, and you'll notice there's a wonderful blend of teachers, parents, and administrators here that care dearly about inclusivity and enhancing the welfare of our whole community. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I think we're here to take them.
So first, I'll just say thank you so much for coming and presenting all of this data to us. I'll be perfectly honest. I knew we had a committee, and I'm not sure I really knew how much the committee has been working on over the last couple of years. So first, thank you. And we appreciate the efforts that you're putting forward on behalf of the school, on behalf of the students, on behalf of the community. And I would just say, know that the board is here to support any initiatives that you think would be beneficial for the school. And I will open it up to members of the board if they have any questions for any of you.
Could an interloper have make a statement or have a question?
Unfortunately, no. We have a public comment session that we can allow you to speak during public comment, but during meeting time, it's board members only. Sorry. Joyce, you look close to saying something, but I can't see it. I see the mouth forming. I see the brain working. I know there's something coming.
Well, I'm looking to some other folks. Like, I know Dave has thought a lot about these issues. He's done great work professionally. And I think he even has a list, right? And Megan, I don't know if she's had time, but she was going to reach out to Cabe to see what other school districts are doing, best practices. So, you know, I would defer to these guys on what we want to do as concrete next steps to really move the needle.
Yeah, thanks, Joyce. Thanks to the team. There's lots of amazing stuff in here, and I really appreciate all the time and effort and thought that's gone into this. I guess I do have like 100 questions that are all variations on the same theme of how can we empower you guys to help further with the work that you're already doing. I guess one foundational question is, do we have data yet on the experience of students currently in the school or in recent years? Erin, I was similarly struck by the graduates who spoke over the weekend. I think we should start with some very basic data about what are the experiences of what's happening in the school currently. And also take a long, hard look at there is a robust literature on all forms of disparities that come to exist early in the educational pipeline, whether by race or by other differences. Have we audited our own school to see if these differences show up? And have we thought about how we might confront them if they do? And try to understand that. So I'd love to see, can we get data that help really guide where the most powerful interventions will be? I'm really curious what benchmarking you guys have thought about. There are many organizations who do this type of work at the elementary level. So which programs have you guys been looking to for inspiration, for curriculum, for ongoing QI and all of these things? That there are many resources. So I imagine you've already been looking. I'm curious which ones you've already been exploring. I'm curious with the improving the diversity of the workforce issue. I understand that there may be some structural questions. We've had conversations about this in other contexts about what we're allowed to ask or not ask. And so it may be that we're not allowed to ask certain questions. But I do wonder if, you know, for example, the University of California, anyone who's applying to a job there is required to submit a diversity statement. It's not asking you what checkboxes you meet. It's simply asking you in what way would you contribute to the diversity and well-being of our organization as a whole. So I wonder whether we might ask that of prospective applicants to work at the school. I understand that we've gone to some minority recruiting fairs. I wonder if we can push that further to go to historically Black colleges to directly recruit from there or to other institutions. I'm really grateful for the offer that Althea might be willing to come and work with us. That would be fantastic. I see your name there. Please come work with us. We would very much welcome that. So I guess this is like my first set of ruminative doodles, which are all to say it sounds like you guys are thinking and doing great things. And I want to be sure that we're supporting you and that the administration is empowered to act on these initiatives as well.
Hi, this is Mohini. So I'll take a stab at the first question. That was, you know, what kind of information do we have from our students? So that's really an excellent question. It's something that we have strongly considered, and we were discussing ways in which we might get information from students, whether it was, and we really talked mostly about the senior grades, not the incoming classes, although there might be a way to do that across the board. And we had thought we could get some general feedback, but also some feedback specifically for things that they might be looking for in these areas. Now, it didn't happen this year. It was just part of the discussion, and then everything fell by the wayside in terms of actually getting more information from students. But yeah, sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I just before you move on, I guess I'm wondering with that question, I imagine that you might not want to be asking probing questions of young kids about some of this stuff. I get that, but I do wonder whether a survey specifically addressing these issues to the parents of, I think it's certainly fair game to ask the parents, have you ever had to talk to your kid because they came home and were complaining about some form of hate speech that they received? Surely the parents are aware of these things when they happen, and we could be asking them in a non-obtrusive way to at least get one step removed some concrete data.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea. That's not what I was talking about. So that's really an excellent idea. What we had thought to do was to include a gentle survey of students to achieve two goals. One is to get some feedback from the people we really want to influence the most. But secondly, to use it also as a tool to try and draw their attention to aspects of diversity and inclusivity that they might otherwise not be paying attention to, so that they get in the habit of looking for things, in the habit of identifying things or noticing things. But we haven't actually put any concrete steps towards that direction. I think I have to pass on the next questions. I don't know if we have that information regarding the QI benchmarks and organizations. I don't know if someone else wants to take a stab at that.
So one thing, David, one thing that we did was to look at peer schools to see what statements peer schools had. And this was really mission statements. Did they have a dedicated web page? What was the setup? And, you know, it's very difficult without going into the school and talking to the faculty to get any idea on this. So we really did a survey, and I remember Tahara and myself, we looked across, I think, 40 schools, public and private. And we were intrigued to find that the vast majority had statements. They had inclusivity statements, they had missions, values, and many of these schools, I mean, Hopkins happened to be one of them, did have a whole dedicated student body and group that worked on diversity and inclusion. We didn't look at national benchmarks, I believe. That was your question right at the beginning. We just did what I would call a general survey of our peer schools. I don't know if that answers your question.
I mean, it does. So that's awesome. Just to start to know what local folks are doing. I mean, I guess part of it also is we shouldn't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel in some ways, right? Especially in the era of COVID and distance learning, where everything's being recorded, right? There are lots of incredible resources that are out there. I'm thinking back to Lisa's that lovely use of the TED Talk as a beautiful existing resource that could be leveraged for educational purpose, right? So I'm curious, you know, one of the ones that I was looking at online as a first glance is the RIDES program, Reimagining Integration, Diverse and Equitable Schools Initiative through Harvard. This is one clearly established program that offers a roadmap for how schools can start to look at these things. I've put out feelers to friends in education to see what they prefer and what other ones exist. But I guess that's what I was thinking of, is more than just the local picture. What extant resources could we leverage? Because we're not going to create a curriculum from scratch, like we just can't. But it might be that one of these groups says, you know, here are 5 mini sessions that you could run for each year K through 6 that would help start dialogue in age-appropriate, developmentally appropriate manner around core topics. That's the kind of thing that I'm imagining. And with that, the process that goes with it, right? The curriculum is only a piece of it.
So David, to sort of answer to you, I am an educator at university. I have to do training at any different department I move to on diversity, inclusion, leadership, etc. It seems to be just normal that, you know, we include this within the school parameters, get our educators involved in this process. Teachers College, where I get my training from, does an excellent job on this, and I can also go there, take a look, see what they have. They're very, very great. They're great about providing service and offering, you know, advice on where to start. So I think this point is really well taken. Look at curriculum, how they're developed. Now, one thing that we've all sort of tried to talk about is how do we move from the book to getting that feeling amongst the students so they feel empowered to discuss these issues. To me, discussing these issues is that higher level learning. And I think that's what we expect of Woodbridge school students. And so I think this is not just about diversity per se, but this also involves this higher level learning that we espouse on our children and our students. And so I think this is a great sort of, area where we can come in from many dimensions. The benchmarking we've sort of left sort of aside at the moment, but I think we need your support is what I'm saying here. It'd be great to have your support here, have your input on this.
I think that's the only thing I'm saying is that we want to support you. I certainly want to support you and ensure that you guys are able to do your work and help Bob, right? I mean, our job is just to supervise Bob, right? So if Bob has said that this is the committee through which he wants to think deeply about this, then we want to help ensure that you guys can be effective.
And we are advisory. So at the end of the day, our mandate is advisory. So all of this is advisory. None of this is. And one thing we try to do is not to burden teachers too much. The burden is immense as it is. So we just like to sort of, as things go along, as things get normal after COVID, I think a lot of these things can be put into place and we can think more deeper and really look at the work that's been done and bring that into the curriculum. And again, we have to be careful when it comes to curriculum. I think that's one of the areas that we're trying to tread very carefully around.
So I think we could probably, if there's more questions, I'm sure there are more, but I think one thing that pops into my head is the committee, while it is a committee of the school, may, given the importance of what discussions are happening, it might be beneficial to have a board member sit on the committee. If people, Bob, you think that that's fine, but I think it, again, if there's the potential for the need for more board support for initiatives, I think having a board member who's involved in the conversations and sitting around the table who can then come back to us and provide information more regularly might be a way of improving our knowledge of this committee.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. I have a couple questions if we have time. So one is I'm just curious about as someone who's newer to the board and newer to Woodbridge, period. I'm just curious about whether we have any anecdotal information. I know we don't have actual data, but do we have any anecdotal information about concerns expressed by parents over the past few years with regard to diversity? So, so that's one question. I should back up and say thank you all for that great presentation. I really appreciated that, and it was very informative. So I just want to thank you for that. So that's my first question has to do with anecdotal information or data. And then the second one has to do with the training that has been done. So you mentioned that I think it was in 2018, there was a implicit bias training that was done and that was shared with faculty and staff. I'm just curious what the reaction was to that training, specifically by the staff. Being aware of some of the research on this, I think the prospect of some of the of trainings like that can be very helpful. I'm also aware of the possibility of these things and some evidence from the research of some of these things backfiring, that it can lead to some people becoming more, who are opposed to these kind of trainings, becoming more entrenched in their beliefs. And those who already believe, kind of go along and they just continue to believe. But does it really work for helping staff who maybe could benefit from some of this, but are initially kind of opposed to it? I know one of the findings from the research is that if you make this mandatory, that it especially tends to have that effect of having a backfiring. So I'm just curious about those two questions: the anecdotal stories and the response from the staff when you did the implicit bias training.
I'll just chime in briefly, Mike. Those on 2 points. I would definitely say there's definitely anecdotal information, anecdotal situations that the administration has handled. And I think of, just a situation where a complaint was made or a concern was there. There's been some individual situations for sure. There's also a more widespread situation in town. I think I'm trying to remember if it was last year or the year before when there was, and it was really more at the secondary level, the high school level, but it really permeated the whole district, the whole town, I should say, and the whole BOA region, which was some anti-Semitic things. So just that comes to mind as well. The ADL was brought in a very purposeful way at the secondary level of the Amity district, and also we engaged them as well for our upper grade students. But there's certainly some anecdotal situations I would clearly say that we have had, yes. In terms of the training, I might have Lisa or Doreen chime in here a little bit. But what I would say here is that I think that the anti-bias training, we had a few, it was a situation, I hate to say one and done, but it was a situation with a single focus. I think, judging by what I remember from the response, I think a lot of people really appreciated it. I think for some people it was actually new territory, or it was territory that hadn't been forged in a long time for them. So I don't know, Lisa or Doreen, I don't know if you wanted to kind of reflect back.
Sure, yeah. Sorry. I was going to say that the original training, Ms. Frisco and I had attended, and then when we came back, we actually shared that training with the staff. And I would say that my recollection of it is that it was well received. What people said and the reflections that we received from folks was positive and very much a let's do more of this. That's kind of my recollection. And I mean, perhaps I'm remembering it wrong, but I remember walking away feeling as if people wanted more and wanted to learn more and wanted to have more conversations. And that was sort of my takeaway and my recollection at this point. And I would say the same for the work that we did this year when we did ask staff members to go back into their classrooms with that audit, and we asked them to sort of reflect on their own spaces, and then they came back together again and they shared first as small groups and then in the larger group. And again, my takeaway was that there was sort of a desire to learn and to do more. So that's been my takeaway the last couple of times. I mean, maybe teachers feel differently, but that's how I felt.
I suppose if we're not doing this already, we could, whenever we do this kind of training, and you might do this for all the training, but to capture the feedback right afterwards so that we know systematically, how people are feeling about this, because people who are, coming up and saying, oh, I wish I could do more, those are the people that are expressive, but it's the quiet people that you wonder about. Are they resisting, or are they quiet because they're just absorbing? Like, you just don't know. I guess I had a question for Bob about recruiting. We don't actually have that many positions, but we do from time to time in replacement. So I was wondering, Bob, if you could kind of walk us through the process that you go through in trying to interweave some of these diversity threads.
I'm not sure I understand by threads. I'm not sure.
What do you do when you fill a position? You had mentioned that you try to tap networks, I don't know, databases, whatever it is that you try to do. Like, what is your approach in trying to increase the likelihood that we would fill a position with a diverse candidate, a diversity candidate?
So we have taken a couple of directions. Again, we have advertised our openings to a network where there is a minority recruitment fair, and made ourselves available. Been there to be personally accessible, even follow up with candidates depending on the responses. just on a side note, I've always been, I'm not disappointed in meeting people. I'm disappointed in the number of candidates that are actually available to come and actually make themselves known. And oftentimes most of the candidates are who, and most of these times are these fairs are done, obviously on site before COVID-19. This is the first one we did virtually. But most of the candidates are secondary school related, looking for high school jobs because they're high school math, based on their certification areas and things like that. We have even gone as far in situations where we've actually sent out and gotten a database from the state of Connecticut to send out openings to, especially in shortage areas, to every single educator who is certified, like for instance, resource teacher, where that's becoming more of a shortage kind of an area. Sending it out to every single candidate who has a certification of a resource teacher to try to tap into being more, a little more initiative on it. So that's been another example. We have had at times, we have sometimes, I think, also utilized some of the people who know Beecher Road School, who feel like they have connections to other institutions or other places where teachers are looking for positions, to actually by word of mouth. So word of mouth has been another way of looking at that. Those are the things we've done at this point, I think, so far down the road. You can't, unfortunately, you cannot ask someone about their background in terms of demographics and things like that. But so that, I guess that's a quick summary, I think.
Bob, two follow-ups. So some of these, so can you ask for a separate diversity statement, a separate impact statement that they would contribute? And separately, as a reflection, I get that it may be difficult and that there are a few candidates, but the data that you've shared is that 3.8% of teachers do self-identify as African-American as one point in the state. So we should be entertaining hypotheses for why we are not doing as well as everybody else in the state. And there could be a whole range of reasons why that would be, but for whatever reason, we're not doing as well as the rest of the state is.
Mm-hmm. In terms of a diversity statement, that is, we would have. Do I believe that's possible? Absolutely. Do I think that we may weave that into the actual questions once this person gets in the actual door? But that doesn't necessarily separate people before you're looking at interviewing them. So I think that's certainly that's certainly an option there. I think it's a complex area of why minority. First of all, again, like I said, there's less than 10% of the certified workforce is non-white, and I don't have the statistics as to where. I'm sure they're very much available as to where higher percentages of non-white staff members are employed. So I think a diversity statement could potentially be part of our future package.
I think it'd be also interesting to see, I'm just curious if we can get this data, we're worse than the state. The question is, how many municipalities, there are 169 school districts, how many of those school districts really have the state average? My guess would be is that there's probably a handful of schools that have the majority, and that many of the municipalities have very low percentage. And so I think before we say we're necessarily worse than everyone, I think do a better job at this. But I think it would be interesting to see kind of where we do compare, to see, are we really worse than everyone else, or we're just worse than a state average? And I just think that that's a different number statistically to look at.
Steve,
again,
curious about that too.
Sorry, I was just going to say, right, like yes, I totally agree. So it may be that the average is not the most useful number, but still, we have to ask ourselves, why can't we recruit people to come work? And I mean, this is something that we struggled with in our residency program, recruiting physicians to come train at Yale. And a huge part of that transition was, would those people feel welcome in our program? And they came and they looked at our program at one point in time and they said, this is not a place where I want to work. There are no other people who look like me. I'm not convinced that there's an institutional culture of support. They were brought, and we had to spend years working to start to recruit people that led to culture change and allowed us to transition the program to a very different culture. So I think we need to do that kind of deep soul searching if we're going to fix that problem.
And maybe
I would take it one step further. We had the same, we have the same issues in recruitment in our department of OBGYN. And I would say the AMA went one step further because there's a lack of diversity in medicine in general. The AMA Foundation has spent millions of dollars on high school programs, getting kids interested in science to kind of get the pipeline growing, which again is taking it back even further than what we were doing in our department.
And maybe we take a long-term approach as well, in addition to whatever we're trying to do currently, in thinking about cultivating a pipeline of minority candidates. So you think you have to push it back a bit and think, okay, how about the younger people that are coming to work with us, like the interns? Because the further back you push, perhaps the greater the likelihood that they'll actually be interested in coming to try out, Woodbridge and Beecher Road School. Kim Franklin wanted to speak, but Steve, is she? Oh, okay. I thought she put up a hand. All right. Sorry about that.
Getting that. And I don't want to cut off this conversation because I do think it's a really important conversation, but I also know it's 8:30 and we still have a very significant budget discussion to have. And I think that I would suggest that we either A, invite the diversity committee back on a more regular basis, because this is an issue we want to work on. And B, I do think that we should probably do some of this at a committee level as opposed to a Board of Ed meeting. But I don't want to stifle any discussion if people feel like they want to continue to discuss.
Can I just take 30 seconds, Steve? I'll make it quick, and I know we can certainly continue the conversation. Joyce, I wanted to circle back to your question. Since we chatted the other day, I have not been able to connect with CABE yet, but I will do that this week for sure to check in about diversity and inclusion best practices. I think that was a great idea. I did remember that the speaker at the last CABE conference, and just remembering the CABE CAPS conference, Derek Gay. I just wanted to say his name out loud because I couldn't remember it last time. The double-edged sword is a TEDx talk that he has, and it was great. And it's not the solution to everything, but it's a good conversation starter and a great discussion about diversity and inclusion. And just really quick, wanted to thank everyone. This is a great conversation. It's so important that we're having it. And Dave and Mike, great questions. Joyce, great questions, and great presentation from the committee. Aaron and everyone else that presented, thank you so much. It was great. So, and Althea, please, we would love the training. I, as a parent and a board member, would absolutely love that training. So thank you for offering it. So, thanks, Steve.
Okay, thank you, everyone, and thank you again for presenting to us. Our next agenda item is a BRS update. Lisa Sherman.
So we've already done that.
We did that already.
Okay. I'm sorry. Lisa? Did we do that? Or did you have more to say?
No, I definitely already did that. That was
okay.
All right. Great. Okay.
Okay. Item 3.3 is just a knowledge that we're going to be doing a wellness report. Is that what you wanted to bring up, Bob?
That's it. And yes, and the wellness report, which we've asked to do that, 1 month later, is really going to be focused on really more on the preparation, I think, for reopening school. Typically, we talk a little bit about food service. We talk a little bit about the building. We talk about the beautification committee and a few other things. So that will be happening for us in July. I'm gonna say July, August, if you can permit me a little bit of flexibility there, based upon it may make more sense in August if we have more information that helps us to make a fuller report.
Okay. Okay. Facilities Committee.
Yeah, hi everyone.
Jeff.
We had our meeting on June 5th, and there's probably no way I'm going to put the proper words, the amount of work that our facilities team has been doing. They gave a slideshow presentation, and to say the school looks exceptional is definitely an understatement. They really took advantage of the situation and put a lot of time and effort into the building, and it absolutely shows. It is highly commendable the amount of work they've been doing and the results that they produce in such a short period of time. I'm excited to be able to get back in and take a look and show off the school to everyone. It's absolutely incredible. So kudos to Al, Vito, and the entire facilities team. But the work they've been doing has been absolutely incredible.
That PowerPoint is attached to the board meeting today. Just it's in the e-meeting, so feel free to look at that PowerPoint of the pictures and of the of all the endeavors work.
I'll echo Jeff. Looking at those pictures in that report, it's just amazing to see the work that our maintenance and facilities people have been doing during the school closure. And it's really exciting that we were able to get a lot of these things done that have been on the list to do for a long time. And I appreciate all the hard work that they've done for this.
As a committee member too, I want to just bring to light that, you know, their efforts actually do, you know, yield the school an extra benefit, because this is stuff that we would sometimes have to pay outside vendors to do, and, you know, acts as a negative against our financial situation with the school. So by them taking it upon themselves and refinishing the entire stage in the South Assembly themselves, that is, you know, money that we can use to better serve the needs of the kids in the school. So I just want to say thank you from, you know, just an aesthetics and from a financial, you know, being good stewards of our asset. Thank you.
The pictures are amazing.
Right. Okay. Finance Committee, Joyce.
Okay, finance. We have ended up with $186,000 surplus. The biggest initial drivers were the unspent special education outplacement costs and COVID-related expenses. But then since we last met in last month, the additional savings or additional surplus was due to the release of encumbrances. Because I think at the last meeting, they were at like 108 and now we're at 186. The town has allowed us to apply 90,000 of that. That's about half to cover our budget expenses. And this is for next year, that is. And they have asked us to return the remainder to the town. So I guess I have a few thoughts. First of all, of course, we would have wanted to be able to apply all of that money to next year's budget. But the town did remind us that they have always come to our aid in the past, and they would appreciate our help in this time of need, just given the economic situation that we're in with high unemployment claims in our town and the uncollected property tax situation that we have. So I just want to say that we on the Board of Ed, we have always advocated and we will continue to advocate for what we need. We've written letters, we've testified at town meetings. Zero, you know, just going back to what we were allowed, zero was not what we asked for. It's not what we wanted, but that is what we got. And we were lucky this year that we do have a bit of a surplus that we can apply to next year's expenses. There are some unknown COVID-related expenses that are a little bit worrisome. You know, for example, the one that Bob had used was transportation costs. So if you think about this COVID environment where you have to keep socially distant, the question is whether we have to space out kids so much and have an aide, et cetera. Jeff would say, you know what, the most effective, cheap way of doing this is you open the window. So there could be much more effective
Agreed.
and less expensive ways to go about doing this. But I just bring that up as an example of how we just don't really know how COVID is going to affect our bottom line. There are a lot of unknowns, so it's a bit tricky to budget accurately. But it is comforting to know that the town will continue to be there for us should there be some, expense that spirals out of control. We also talked about at the last Finance Committee meeting a bit about planning for next year and thinking about not only, of course, cutting costs, but also seeing whether we could generate more revenue streams. So, Bob, thank you for looking into the grant angle, trying to generate some money there. Some other examples are, maybe we charge fees for using our facilities. Maybe there are fees that we could raise from holding some after school classes in high demand areas, as just a few ideas to think about revenue, not just cost cutting, but in conjunction with cost cutting. We also talked about following up on cost sharing. So we should try to get that meeting with Bethany scheduled because, it's been several months, COVID happened, and then before we know it, the next year will be upon us. So hopefully we'll be able to begin the conversation about some cost sharing opportunities there. That's it for me.
I think we have a bunch of action items. So Bob, do you want to run through what the action items are?
Sure. So you have, so one of the action items is what we plan on doing for pre-purchasing. Purchasing recommendations. And so purchasing recommendations come in the form of items that are COVID-19 related, that are unbudgeted, totaling $46,000 and $46,491. This is additional distance learning costs for extended school year summer, as well as beginning the process of buying personal protective equipment and custodial cleaning supplies. Again, a total of $46,491, and then also pre-buying purchasing recommendations with our surplus funds for a total of $43,980. Again, this would be a total, I'm losing the exact total, around $90,000 total of purchasing that we need the board to acknowledge and agree to, which is $90,000 of the $186,000 surplus. Start there.
So I think there's a motion in our list of motions. I don't know if someone wants to make the motion so we can discuss.
There is a motion. You're correct.
I'll make the motion.
Go ahead.
Move that, as outlined by the superintendent, we authorize pre-purchasing from the 2019-2020 budget surplus in the amount of $43,980, COVID expenses in the amount of $46,491, and return $95,581 to the town.
Is there a second on that? I don't see hands, so I'll
second it.
So Steve, this is,
okay.
we're just approving the, applying the 90,000, right? But not like the details of how it's going to be applied. Is that correct?
Well, we have, these are the details that we're planning on, at least for the surplus monies. Yes, these are the details of specific items for pre-buying, or the unbudgeted COVID-19 items that we are anticipating needing to cover.
The reason why I asked is I did want to discuss the additional 0.5 psychologist request. And I didn't know, is that something that I discussed now, or is that separate?
That's not part of pre-buy.
It's not in the 186 that we're discussing.
Okay.
That'll come under the budget reconciliation part of it.
All right, so I'll second Lynn's motion again.
Okay.
Daniel Callen.
Further questions on this part of it? All right. Any opposition? And please, I only have some of you on my screen at once, so if you're opposed, just unmute yourself and shout out, because I can only see a few of you. Okay, so that part passes. Okay, and then Bob, the next part.
Sure. In terms of the next part, in terms of budget reconciliation, so you'll see in the document here adjustments that have been made. So I just want to say this, that first of all, in reflecting on all of this, the administrative team still believes in the right thing to do. Our original plan was the right thing to do for Beecher Road School in terms of the continuity of a full-time psychologist. Our psychologists do the same kinds of work for social workers. And so we still believe in reflecting that the original plan was the right thing for Beecher Road School, but I am recognizing the concerns that some board members, many board members, whatever, have regarding or have raised. So what I am asking you to look at tonight, and I'm asking you to support, I need the support of the board in order to move forward still with the kinds of services that a psychologist would serve and would support, as well as to make this work, the right staffing. So what I'm asking of the board to support here is still supporting a 0.5 half-time psychologist, as well as restoring the social worker half-time that was originally taken out of the budget.
So Bob, just from a person, I just want to understand, is that in the budget reconciliation?
So it's not, thank you for saying that. So it's not just in the adjustments that you see there where it says restore social worker and it says just have the psychologist is only 0.5. It is also in those attached pages of the budget reconciliation. It is included there. I also want to be very clear that this continues to keep the library position full-time. So it restores the library to full-time. It restores a social worker half-time position. It allows us to hire the half-time psychologist. And it's all contained in the budget reconciliation pages that are attached in your e-meeting.
So there's technically two motions, but it's really could be handled in one motion if people are okay with these changes. So I would say let's approve the budget adjustments first, and because the reconciliation is a roll up of everything. So the budget adjustments, is probably the first thing to do. So Lynn, do you want to read that budget adjustment motion and we can see what people think?
So that we can have discussion, yes?
Yeah.
I move to adjust the 2020-2021 budget to restore the social worker position to 0.5 FTE, library position from 0.7 FTE to 1.0 FTE, to reduce miscellaneous office supplies, postage, equipment by $5,310, health insurance by $9,222, and technology equipment by $60,578.
I second that.
Okay. Discussion.
Bob, you mentioned that your original, you stand behind your original plan of reducing the social worker, increasing, bring on the psychologist. Can you just explain your rationale for still, and the other administrators' rationale for standing behind that, following some of the discussion we've had around the ratios of the professional organizations?
So, sure, I will be glad to do that. I don't dispute the ratios that have been presented by those organizations. I will say, this is with all due respect to the organizations are obviously going to advocate very clearly for the people who they represent. Our model at Beecher Road School has been an integrated model for years, in that it's not just simply working in a silo of testing or working in a silo of going to PPT meetings separately, but it's based on relationships. It's based upon the whole from beginning of having a referral, to getting to know the student, to testing, to counseling, to being part of the meetings that continue to look at goals and objectives and move forward. Just by virtue of how many people we have on the ground right now, school psychologists are doing a lot of the work that in some places a social worker would do, just by virtue of that. And so we do believe that, and this has nothing to do with my belief about social workers or my belief about anybody's value or whatever. It's all about where is the bigger bang for the buck in terms of flexibility. And so that's why I say that I still stand by that. I know there are people who disagree with me. I understand that, but it's where we have, it's just where we're at. We do need more psychologists time on the ground, though. I will say that.
I guess I would just want to clarify that it's the National Association for School Psychologists, not for social workers, although we did mention that is advocating that there be social workers. And in fact, the social worker ratio would be 400 students to one social worker. So it's not the National Association for Social Workers, but the National Association for School Psychologists that's saying that there should be social workers. Also, I think that there is a distinction between the populations that each of the psychologists and the social worker focuses on. And so the psychologists tend to focus on the special ed population, as we heard and had confirmed by our special ed director, whereas the social worker focuses on the general ed population.
So I think, just to be fair, though, in discussions, the other thing that Bob did present was what our neighboring BOA districts and what other districts regionally do. And I don't think any district locally has the ratios that were being professed by the Society of School Psychologists. I don't think Bethany has a social worker. We said that the ratio at Amity was about 1,800 kids to 1. I know Monroe did away with a social worker and they use town social services for all of those things. So I think what Bob is saying is that there's clearly many ways of doing this. And I would say that the administrative team felt that this was what was best interest based on what they see on the ground in our school. And again, as I said, I don't think national norms are things that we should strive to necessarily, when the average pay rate for a teacher across the country is probably 55% of what we pay our teachers at Beecher. And I think school sizes at Beecher are lower than what our national norms as well. So I just think that a lot of times what locally happens in a school is not necessarily based on what a national average is. But again, I think what Bob is cognizant of is that clearly there was a lot of concern over this. And I commend you, Bob, for, sort of switching direction a little bit. But I appreciate the position you feel that you're in at this point. So thank you.
So I'm a little bit confused. It seems like now is not the right time to speak to the psychologist request. Is that correct? Because we're not approving that piece yet. Am I
I
understanding
believe that
correctly?
was already, we've already approved that part of the budget, I thought, of what we're
Yes,
making a reconciliation to this.
you'll
Alright,
see it. Yeah, the
No, I'm
school
saying
site.
before this meeting, we submitted a town budget, right? I mean, I could be wrong, but
We submitted a town budget, and so, and then when we reduced a full-time psychologist that we originally had put in our budget. When we had $115,000 increase, we reduced that to half-time. So currently in a zero budget, we have a half-time psychologist budgeted in there. What we've done tonight is we've made some adjustments, and by reducing technology and a few other items, we've been able to restore the social worker and restore the library as well. But I think that the answer is, if you approve this with the reconciliation, we will have a half-time psychologist and a half-time social worker, and a full-time librarian, and the art will still be down to 0.7.
Okay, I guess I want to just discuss the 0.5 psychologist request. I'm glad that the 0.5 social worker has been reinstated, but I kind of think of the psychologist request as a little bit separate, in the sense that that request has led us to look, a couple of us, to look at the benchmarking data more closely, right? And so I think we just want to ask ourselves, is looking at the numbers, whether we could improve the efficiency in delivering some of our special ed services. And I just want to be very clear that I am very, very committed to serving the special ed population, not only because it's legally required, but it's the right thing to do. So I don't want to be misconstrued in any way. But what I'm focusing on is really just a matter of efficiency. And it's efficiency which we would want to see across all the departments, but including special education, where we spend a lot of money. So, Steve was saying, look, there are these national association ratios, which are not as applicable to us. So I'll just mention those just so that you have it, right? So so the National Association for School Psychologists are recommending a ratio of 500 to 700 students for each psychologist, right? We have 850 students. We currently have 2 psychologists in our building. So if you look at the ratios from the BOA districts, I think we have to be careful about small numbers, right? Some of those populations are very small. And I would say you have to even be careful of Orange, even though Orange seems like a big district. They have 4 elementary schools. And so you can't just share a psychologist across different buildings. It doesn't work like that. So if you look at the Amity numbers, I think our current staffing of psychologists are actually more or less in line. So then I think we need to ask ourselves, well, let's look at caseload, okay? And then let's look at the type of cases that our special ed team might be looking at. Are they different, right? And if we look at the caseload, first of all, the average special ed population is 15%, right? We're 12%. So we're lower than the average rate at the national and state level. Right. Now, the National Association for School Psychologists would say that there's an expectation that a psychologist would serve 65 to 91 students. If we do the math for our 12% population of special ed students, 850 students, right? That's about 100 special ed students. That's 50 special ed students per psychologist, right? So the caseload is actually less at Beecher. Now, then, if you look at the type of cases, which we talked about at the finance meeting, we explored whether maybe our cases are more complex. Maybe, we have more autism, whatever it is. But our special ed director confirmed that what we see is no different than what is being seen elsewhere. So, you know, in an ideal world, of course, we would want to hire more staff, right? We always do, but we have a limited number of dollars, and everyone is being asked to do more with less. It's unfortunately a zero-sum game. And so since I've been on the board, the only new hires that have been made have been in the special ed space. And maybe that is perfectly reasonable. But I think we have to ask ourselves, though, do we have the most efficient special ed delivery model out there? And so if you look at the letter, one of the letters from the psychologist on staff here at Beecher, she did say that if if the team was consulted, they would be able to manage the caseload if they just realign some of the assignments. So I guess I just want to put out there a question as to whether we are operating as efficiently as possible.
Can I just
look at the numbers.
If I could just make a couple of quick comments, just trying to maybe kind of weave a few of these things together. In the last few years, yes, we have hired really additional staff has been in the area of special education, correct? Some of you might remember back, and there's a lot of slides to remember and a lot of data to remember, but Beecher had reduced the number of resource teachers over the years, and those positions went unfilled, even though needs continued to rise, enrollment continued to rise. And so in the last 2 years, when we have increased resource teachers by 2, that has really been to kind of gain back positions that were lost to attrition but never replaced. And our population overall has gone up, and the percentage of our special education has gone up by 3% of a larger population over the time. I think we've also been playing catch up a little bit in adding the halftime speech this year, because with the increased numbers came the increased needs for speech, and that's why we added that. And with speech, we've actually added a little OT, and psychologist is there as well for the testing, because there's more students to test, more annual reviews, more triennial reviews of testing. I also want to make sure that, and I know we've discussed this before, but the psychologist, while it may look like a psychologist is only going to take 50 of our 100 identified kids and the other psychologist takes the other 50, our school psychologists work with general education students as well as special education students, just like our social worker does some work with special education as well, in the reverse. So I want to make sure that people don't think that the school psychologist only has 50 people that they would ever see. They're also, with the increased needs we have comes more times where the psychologist has to come and help to de-escalate situations. And on a final note, I will say that while we've had some natural attrition in our numbers, we've also been able to be very efficient with the new staff members that we have. We have been able to maintain our students in their homeschool environment at Beecher Road School and eliminate any new outplacements by virtue of how we have set up our social emotional rooms and the rooms that meet the needs of our kids. We've been able to be successful. I'm knocking on wood. Sometimes that doesn't last forever, but we have a very dedicated, highly trained staff who is building capacity to keep our kids here. Every dollar that we keep in Beecher Road School is better for that kid who can stay in his homeschool environment, as well as keeping the dollars in the building and not sending it out to $150,000 outplacement. So I just a couple of things I wanted to just weave together in the big picture here.
Are there other comments?
I guess I would say, look, I don't know what the right level, not what the right level is, but where we were before, right, might not have been correct. And so I guess I would caution us against saying, okay, let's just get back to where we were, because maybe where we were was not the right place. Maybe, I'm just saying. So as a board member, I think it's our job to just ask the questions and think through, are we as efficient as we could be? I am sympathetic to the fact that we will have a backlog of PPTs and evaluations because of COVID. And so, one of the ideas that was floated was having a temp psychologist hired. Because if you have a
Joyce, can I just interrupt about that for 1 second?
Yeah.
The request on a school psychologist for our budget came long before COVID. It was asked in the fall when we put the budget together. So I'm not sure that backlog is really the answer. And I just, I just want to make sure everyone has a fair chance to speak. I know, you have comments on this, but I just want to make sure everyone else has an opportunity to speak. And the only other thing I just want to add in is, the other area that we say we're really interested in, and we've heard from the teachers over and over again that they need help with, is classroom behavior, room safety. And I think, I don't know, I feel like if our administrative team is telling us we need more psychologists, I just, again, I'm going to support this move because I feel like I've watched over the years when we didn't increase the support of special ed students when our population went up. We've had 2 psychologists for a really long time when our population was down at 600 or 700 kids. And I just think the percentage has increased and the number of students have increased. And these requests, again, were not COVID related. We can say COVID might have made it worse, but these requests came before the COVID crisis ever touch base in our school district. But I just want to make sure that I see Cheryl's hand raised, but I don't know if any other board members want to comment on this. And then if no one else does, I'll have Cheryl speak, and then Joyce, I'm happy to come back to you again. Cheryl?
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to share, when we're looking at efficiencies, I think Bob summarized it well. We brought students back from out of district. We've been able to maintain students in district. We've added 2 social emotional classrooms. The psychologist is really critical in that role in supporting those students, de-escalating, working on coping skills. And that is a huge part of what the needs are, is that we have students with that type of need and they've been able to support that. So if they're having that whole approach of counseling, supporting those classrooms as well as testing, it's not just testing, it's the whole picture of everything. So I think we have been efficient. We've kept students in-house. We've had extra money available because of that. So we are being more efficient, but the needs are there for the students that they need those supports, general ed and special ed. And I think the teachers need the support too. Oftentimes as administrators, we're doing a lot of the behavioral supports. It is a help to us also to have an extra psychologist available to help with situations and crises. So just some thoughts that I had. Thank you. Did we lose Steve?
Yeah, I got. I don't know. Somehow the iPad muted me on its own. Joyce, I don't know if you had any final comments. I don't see anyone else raising. Did you want to say anything else?
No, that's fine. I'm not opposed to adding a 0.5 psychologist, just to be clear. My question is more the request has sparked conversation around what are the proper levels? Are we operating efficiently? So it's really just, are we as efficient as we can be? And I don't know how I can be assured of that other than through anecdotal information.
All right, so the motion, just so I'm clear, the motion is that we adjust the 2021 budget to restore social worker by 0.5 FTE, library position from 0.7 to 1, reduce miscellaneous office supplies, postage equipment by 5,300, health insurance by 9222, and technology equipment by 60,578. That does include the 0.5 psychologist in addition. It's not part of the motion because that's in the budget as it stands right now. I think the budget adjustment is what we're voting on. And then we'll do the budget reconciliation as the final overall. So is anyone opposed to the budget adjustments as just presented?
I am.
Okay. Dan, anyone else? Okay. All right, that passes. And now the final is looking at the entire budget reconciliation, which is basically, Bob, do I have this correct? The budget reconciliation is line item, everything that's in the new budget and what got just moved in and what moved out.
That's right. Correct? So the reconciliation captures the things that we just mentioned that we're approving, whether it's, reducing office supplies, for instance, or reducing technology, or restoring the library from 0.7 to 1.0. So all the things we just mentioned are part of the budget reconciliation attached sheets.
Okay. Lynn, will you read the motion?
I will. I move that we authorize reconciliation of the 2021 budget as presented by the administration.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Is there discussion on the reconciliation, which is just basically showing it all on one page? Okay. All those in favor of approving the budget reconciliation? I did it backwards. Sorry. Anyone opposed to the budget reconciliation as presented?
I'm opposed to Neil Calvin.
Okay. Thank you. All right. It passes. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, everyone, for a great discussion. CABE liaison report.
Thank you also to Al.
Oh, sorry, Al. How could I leave you out? You're right in the center of my screen. You're the Alice of my Brady Bunch right now. CABE liaison report, Megan?
Nothing to add. I think just to reiterate what I said before, we'll be connecting with CABE this week to discuss diversity and inclusion best practices.
All right. Item 4 is any new business. I don't know if anyone has any new business tonight.
Sorry, can I add something about CABE? I don't know if all of you had captured the most recent newsletter where it asked districts to reconsider their SRO position in light of how people of color perceive SROs. I don't know if you saw that article, but I think that's quite interesting to take a look at, especially since we do have an SRO ad hoc committee that is about to start up.
I didn't see it, but we'll make sure we add that to the list of material for that committee. Okay. Public comment. I know someone wanted to speak up before. I don't know if that person is still on the call. But I will ask. I can't see people, all of you. So anyone, public comment from anyone? Okay. All right. Then I need a motion for us to go into executive session.
Non-meeting.
Oh, sorry. Said executive session on the thing. Into non-meeting. So actually, I think we just adjourn and we just go into non-meeting. We don't move to go into non-meeting, correct? Yeah. So I need a motion to adjourn.
Right. Yes.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Okay. And I see Jeff is seconding it. Okay. All those, any opposed to adjourning? Thank you, everyone. I appreciate everyone's input tonight. And for the board members, we have a non-meeting. And I think
Steve, I'm sending everybody, right now I'm sending an invitation for all the board members and Al Pulo to be part of the non-meeting. So I'm sending that right now. It'll be in Google Meet and I'm sending it now.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.